On the morning of May 10th, 1996, 33 climbers left their high camp on Mount Everest and headed for the summit. They had each paid up to $65,000 for the privilege. By the following morning, 8 of them were dead. Not because the mountain was unusually dangerous that day, not because anyone made one catastrophic mistake, because of 100 small decisions made by exhausted people at the top of the world, where the air is so thin that the human brain stops working properly, and because a storm came, and because nobody turned back when they should have. Here is what Everest had become by 1996. For most of its history, Mount Everest was the domain of elite mountaineers, government expeditions, specially selected teams, men and women who had spent years preparing for the specific physical and technical demands of 8,849 meters. That changed in 1985, when a Texas businessman named Dick Bass, with no elite mountaineering background, paid for professional guides to take him to the summit. He made it. He was 55 years old. The message was clear. With enough money and the right guides, ordinary people could climb the highest mountain on Earth. By 1996, commercial guiding on Everest was a thriving industry. Adventure consultants, run by New Zealand guide Rob Hall, charged $65,000 per client. Mountain Madness, run by American guide Scott Fisher, was right behind them. Rob Hall was extraordinary at what he did. He had guided 39 clients to the Everest summit, a record. He was meticulous, safety focused. He had a rule, a 2 o'clock rule. Whatever happened, whatever the weather, if you had not reached the summit by 2 in the afternoon, you turned around. No exceptions. It was the only way to guarantee enough time to get down before dark. Scott Fisher was different, more relaxed, more instinctive. He had summited Everest without supplemental oxygen in 1994. He was supremely confident in his own ability. On May 10th, 1996, both teams were going for the summit on the same day, along with several other expeditions. The upper mountain was more crowded than it had ever been. Among Hall's clients, John Krakauer, a journalist from Outside Magazine, there to write a story about Commercial Everest. He would summit that morning and make it down alive. Most of his team would not be so fortunate. The 2 o'clock rule existed for a reason. Everest storms do not announce themselves. They build fast, sometimes in minutes. And at 8,000 meters, the consequences of being caught in one are almost always fatal. Every guide who had ever worked on Everest knew this. Every experienced climber knew this. On May 10th, the summit push ran late. Fixed ropes that should have been in place before the climbers arrived had not been set. Climbers waited in line at critical sections of the route. The bottleneck cost them hours. Rob Hall reached the summit at 2:10 p.m., 10 minutes past his own rule. He waited at the top for his client Doug Hansen, an ordinary man who had failed to summit the previous year and had come back to try again. Hall had promised to get him there. Hansen arrived, exhausted, moving desperately slowly. Hall could have turned them both around, should have turned them both around. He didn't. Scott Fisher was somewhere behind them, moving slowly himself. He had been ill for several days before the summit push. He had hidden it from his clients and his team. He pushed through it. On summit day, he was already in serious trouble, and nobody fully knew. The storm hit in the early afternoon. Within minutes, visibility on the upper mountain dropped to near zero. Wind speeds reached hurricane force. The temperature plummeted to -40. Climbers who had been making their way down were suddenly lost. The route markers had been buried under new snow. In the darkness and the storm, experienced guides and paying clients alike were crawling on hands and knees across the South Col trying to find their tents. Some found them, some did not. What happened on the night of May 10th to 11th, 1996 is one of the most harrowing stories in the history of mountaineering. Rob Hall was still high on the mountain with Doug Hansen. Hansen died sometime that night. Hall, frostbitten and exhausted, could not move. He was at 8,700 meters, alone, in a hurricane, without enough oxygen. He had a radio base camp patched through a call to his wife, Jan Arnold, in New Zealand. She was 7 months pregnant with their first child. Hall's voice was calm. He told her not to worry. He told her he loved her. He told her to sleep well. "I love you. Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry too much." Those were the last words Jan Arnold ever heard from her husband. Rob Hall died on the south summit of Everest on May 11th. He was 35 years old. Scott Fisher never made it back to his tent. He was found by a Sherpa the following morning, still alive but unconscious from exhaustion and altitude sickness. He died on the mountain that afternoon. He was 40 years old. On the South Col, a group of climbers had survived the night by lying in the open in their suits, too disoriented to find their tents. One of them, Beck Weathers, was left for dead twice. He was found lying on the ice with his face frozen solid. He got up. He walked back to camp alone. He lost both hands and his nose to frostbite. He came home. 8 people died on Everest in those 2 days. Rob Hall, Scott Fisher, Doug Hansen, Andy Harris, Yasuko Namba, 3 others. John Krakauer came home. He had summited that morning and descended before the storm trapped the others. He spent the night at Camp 4, not knowing who had survived and who had not. He wrote about it afterward, about the guilt of having made it when others had not, about a decision he made in the storm that he believed may have contributed to one death. He published Into Thin Air in 1997. It became one of the best-selling books ever written about mountaineering. It forced a global conversation about what Everest had become. The questions it raised have never fully been answered. Should inexperienced clients be allowed to attempt Everest at all? Should commercial guides be taking paying customers? People whose primary qualification was having $65,000 to the most dangerous place on Earth. Rob Hall had guided 39 people to the summit before 1996. He was one of the most careful men on that mountain. He broke his own rule for one client because he had made a promise. Because Doug Hansen had come back for a second attempt and Hall had told him he would get him there. That promise killed them both. Beck Weathers, the man left for dead twice, went home to his family in Dallas. His wife had already been told he was dead. When he walked into the rescue helicopter, his face was black with frostbite. He recovered. He wrote his own book. He gives talks today. Jan Arnold gave birth to a daughter in New Zealand. She named her Sarah. Sarah Hall never met her father. 33 climbers left high camp on May 10th, 1996. 8 of them never came down, and the mountain is more crowded today than it has ever been.